So we're in Rookies, and we're going to continue on with this presentation. So Karen had talked about the snake story. Mm-hmm. Have I ever told the snake story with you around?
Remind me of it.
And I don't always tell the snakes. I always tell the sparrow story. It's brilliant. But sometimes, a lot of times I don't. I only tell the snake story, and I just got done telling it to a couple, to real super victim-y people. So the snake story is a guy's hiking on a mountain, and he comes across a frozen snake, and he's a rescuer, and he wants to save the snake. So he takes the frozen snake and he builds a warm fire, puts it by the fire, hoping to thaw the snake out, save the snake's life. Snake thaws out, curls up next to him, lurches out and bites him, and the guy's going to die. There's no medical attention anywhere, and snake is deadly poisonous. So the guy goes, why would you do that? I saved you and you killed me. It's not fair. And then the snake says, well, that's just what snakes do. Why would you pick me up? That's on you. That's not me. So then you tell the spouse, who is the snake in the story, the point of the story isn't that Bob is a snake. The point of the story is Bob's consistent. He's consistent with his nature. He was high on your first date, and he's pretty well been on substances most of the marriage. He's consistent. Or, 1 year into dating, you saw him rage, and you saw him, tear a telephone off a wall, and, now he throws his cell phone. So, yeah. But I include the sparrow story in every feedback session, because even somebody who's not in a relationship has been in a relationship, or they want to be. You get very few people who've never been in a relationship and don't aspire to be in one. So you're trying to shift them out of victim mentality. And that story just does an amazing job of that. And I like the sense of recognition in people's eyes when they get it. When you're like, not everyone who shits on you is necessarily your enemy. And they go, oh. And I'm like, they're actually your best friend. They're your teachers. You should thank them. I was telling the group, the ladies group, a couple weeks ago, the woman I was involved with, who was the meanest, nastiest, soul capturing. I could go on and on, but you get the point.
Is it
Christy, yeah.
She's
That
legendary.
She's legendary. She's a legend. That someday when I'm selling hundreds of thousands of books and I'm rolling in boodle, as they say, it's a British thing, I'm going to send her a check for like $100,000 as a consulting fee, because I'm really grateful, because I wouldn't be having the impact on the world that I have now without her tutelage. And it cost me a lot. It almost cost me my life, and it did cost me my marriage, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it's worth it, because of just the healing and the learning, that took place.
It never would have happened. It never would have surfaced.
It would have, with another Christy.
Down the road.
Probably not too far down the road from her, but she was the one that, So that's a good attitude to have about a spouse or a former spouse. And it's the truth. It's the truth. So, what about the iceberg? Does that ring a bell?
Does not for me.
I got this concept from a book by Cloud and Townsend. Happiness is a Choice, which is sort of like a Christian book on codependency, and it's a very good book. My understanding of compulsions and addictions are that they're sort of the tip of the iceberg. He had it as a cake, and the cake just didn't make sense to me. So it could be anything. I have a guy who I just was meeting with, and he comes home from work, he walks in the house and he starts what I call redding up, Pennsylvania hillbilly term, cleaning up the house, because he grew up in chaos and a messy house. So he has he has an addiction to straightening the house. So it's more of a neat compulsion, but it's rooted in either childhood abuse or abandonment. So this lady has shame, and her reaction to the cleaning is he's telling her she's a bad housekeeper, and she gets really reactive. And I'm like, well, you're misunderstanding. He's really not saying that at all. He just is driven by the need to create some order because of how he grew up. So understanding that, and this could be alcohol, it could be sex, it could be any compulsion or addiction would fall under this, because they're all caused by either abandonment or abuse. And sometimes they're very specific and easily understood, where you can clearly see, like in that case, why a compulsive neatness would come from growing up in a chaotic, messy house. That makes sense. And they all make sense once you really figure out what's driving it, So I don't use this in every feedback session. I just use it when there's a lot of compulsions and addictions. And then what a 12-step program concerns themselves with is the behavior. Quit doing it. And there's nothing wrong with that approach. It's effective, and we'll use spirituality and accountability and to stop doing it, and they need to stop doing it. But I like combining that with healing the wounded inner child, healing the source of it. And if you heal the source of it, then it's a slow fix, but and some things aren't very amenable to therapy. Abandonment issues, you can't heal abandonment issues. You can manage them, but you're not going to do 3 years of therapy and knock out 80% of your abandonment issues. It's just not going to happen. Whereas shame, my experience is it does get better. You can do 3 years of therapy and knock out 40% of your shame, which is a lot. So anxiety, that's a toughie. If somebody has really deep-seated anxiety, you can do a lot of therapy and still have deep-seated anxiety, So some things get more better than other things, but it's still good to do the work, you know.
Do you think behavioral approach can do better with anxiety than most?
Probably.
Than most.
Probably.
Things? Yeah,
There's this lady called Lucinda Bassett. You ever heard of her?
I've heard of her.
She was just somebody who had anxiety, and she just developed a system that works, that gives people relief. And I don't even know what the system is. I bought it. I never really read it or listened to it. But it's supposed to be effective in helping you deal with anxiety better, which, if that's all you can do, then do it. Because the other thing about anxiety, there's no real good medication for it. Depression, if your system agrees with one of the antidepressants, it's like miracle cure almost. ADD, you know, the next day you're more focused. But anxiety, you can take Xanax and Valium, but they're addictive, you know, and dangerous.
And it affects other areas.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if somebody takes Xanax within moderation, I think it's fine. But you're playing with fire of getting addicted, you know. So then I'm on 31. I don't know where you guys were. Were we before that?
No,
Yeah, 31.
went through form norms.
Yeah. Okay, so the next 31 is sell the feedback session as being, you know, really amazingly wonderful and powerful. And that's sometimes hard to do if you've never done a feedback session. You know, how many have you done?
Oh, 15.
And after most of those, weren't you like, woohoo? Or how many? About half.
About half, I'd
Okay.
say.
Okay.
And
And
they get better all the time.
and maybe some of those were lack of experience, but some of them were the client.
Yeah, and I either want to go woohoo or are you an idiot that you don't get this?
Yeah, I'm
And
wondering
I don't
about,
do that, but one of those two things.
I'm wondering about the guy who just kind of, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't done that,
I know, but even that you
that I want to.
and we've talked about that a little bit, because if they don't get it,
They're not ready.
they're not ready. We always want to put out not only put out a plus message, but believe it.
Believe it ourselves.
Believe it ourselves. So it's natural and genuine.
What I have found that in a couple cases, right at that point, and this could be my presentation of it, I don't know, or they're not ready, whatever, but they keep coming, and a few sessions down the road, they're like,
Some of the light bulbs
back
go on.
over some of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So I've run into that, or they're just sitting there taking notes on the whole thing, which I really try and discourage. But if they're that kind of person,
I say I discourage it, but if they're actually doing it, it's probably what they need to do.
Yeah.
But it does seem to take away. I want them with me. You know, I tell them if all goes well, it'll be like somebody's taking a branding iron to your soul. You ain't gonna forget it. But if it doesn't happen, and you take notes, you can have a bunch of notes that really don't change your life.
You know, go back and look at it.
You know, even if you do, they're not going to change your life. So, be present. You know. But yeah, I want people almost whipped into a frenzy when they come to the feedback session. That may be a little strong.
Coming into it.
Yeah, they're coming in for a life-changing experience. And I got a fortune cookie the other day. This was after I have a really disastrous feedback session about once every 5 years or so, but this was a few days after I'd had it. And the saying said, under promise and over deliver. And with this guy, I over promised and under delivered. You never want to do that. But I would promise pretty high and then deliver. And even new associates, once they do one of these feedback sessions, it's energizing. It's like, woo, you know. Nancy, when she gets done with one, she's like doing flips and high-fiving and swaggering, and you know.
And you know that it's successful when you know that the person has gotten it and isn't ready to walk out and is wanting to come back and see you again and continue with recovery.
That's a good question. Frankly, I measure the success by the eye contact.
Right.
And when somebody's tracking with you and a light bulb goes on, I know it. Okay? If somebody's looking at me glassy-eyed and they're bored,
Thinking of something else.
I actually had another disastrous feedback session about 6 months ago. It was two doctors, and one of them was the lady was having an affair, and I think she still was at it. And she was just showing up to sabotage the therapy. And the man had real intense abandonment issues, and we had some individual sessions where he was getting it, he bought the book, he was having insight. But with her in the room, it was almost like he was under her spell, and they just looked at me like, screw you, we're not going to get this, who do you think you are?
You're not making any difference.
Yeah, and so I did the introduction, and normally just in the introduction I got a meeting out of my hand, but they were just giving me the stink eye. And then we did get into counter-dependent and codependent, and they started to liven up a little bit, and oh, that's me, you know. But it's it's like being a comedian and you're in a room that nobody's laughing and hardly anybody's paying attention. It's a bad
They call that dying on stage.
dying on the stage. Yeah.
You refer to the introduction of the feedback. Is
The
that
section.
somewhere, what's in the introduction? What have you not gotten to?
I should give you one of my templates.
Okay, good.
Well, I basically
I thought
gave
I
you
heard
one
it.
this morning.
You didn't know if you wanted it now.
Jerry's is in there too.
Oh, well, do
Which
you
one
want-
is which?
This is the one that's good to eat. This is Jerry's. Small begins, since you don't like him as well.
Did you-
Okay.
Sorry.
Here you go. That's all yours. I didn't get my 2 pieces.
Want me to sit up your
of bread.
table?
Oh, that one? No, I'll set it up later.
That's yours.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No biggie.
Is that all you need?
Yep. What were we talking about? Template.
The template.
I gave you one for Mick.
Yeah, you did, and so, but you added to it, so I just take off the stuff that was tailor-made to him, and that's the template. I also got a hold of Jerry's template.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got this.
Basically, what I do is I start with observations that are unique about that person, and then I talk about insight and paradigm shift, and comfort the disturbed, and psychological surgery, and then I launch into enmeshment, emotional cutoff, and counterdependency. But yeah, you've got.
Okay.
That's pretty much what I do, and I may freelance as the need comes up. You know, as I think of things. So the other next point is, if you think that you got a toughie on your hands, set it for 2 hours. Like I'm doing one with this 71-year-old fellow, and it's really not that tough, but when you're 71, you have a longer story, and it takes a little longer not only to do the assessment, but it takes longer to also do the feedback. And I don't always have 2 hours to give to people, but I usually always feel rushed if I have an hour and a half. And if I have 2 hours, I could almost always get it done, but you have to keep it moving. Sometimes you have to tell clients, they'll be real chatty in the beginning, and you have to tell them, okay, this is my week to talk. You need to just listen. You can ask questions and jump in, but this is your time.
Don't add to the story.
Right, this is your time to listen, because we got a lot of ground to cover, and I want to get it covered, you know. Oh, this next one is the first thing is, it's nice to have your caseload build up to where you don't need your clients emotionally or financially. You just don't need them. It's not good when you have it build up to where you're looking to get rid of them because you're so busy. Who can I fire? But what happens with a lot of new therapists who that's their income and their self-esteem is they'll cling on to a client to the bitter end. If I see somebody miss a couple sessions in a row and not bring in good material the third session, my thinking is these people are wasting my time, and they're, for whatever reason, probably need to take a break. So I'll bring it up and say, you know, are you ready to do this, or what's going on? And sometimes I find out that, you know, kid was in the hospital 1 week, and, you know, the wife was down with the flu the next week, and it really isn't that they're not committed, it's just life really does intervene at times, you know. But I'd say new therapists tend to make mistakes by, you just don't even want to think of termination, you know, because they've been this wonderful client, they give you warm fuzzies, they were teachable, and you just want to keep, at least I did, I just wanted to keep them, and because it was more my psychological need, and other times it was financial and psychological. But you'll have a lot less cancellations if you weed out the people that aren't committed. In fact, what I'll do is somebody they don't follow through 2 weeks in a row and they want to set another appointment, and I'll say, well, I'll set it, but just know that as soon as you set it, you bought that time. I don't care if your dog dies, you're paying for that session. You know, I don't care what happens, you just bought that time. Because I don't.
Do you not, prior to that, charge them if they miss?
No, this is even if they give me notice. You're dripping there a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
I'll get it.
Sometimes, if it's a new client and it's the first time they've done it, and they're supposed to have read about it, sometimes I charge them, sometimes I don't. If they're a multi-millionaire and they read the form, I charge them, you know. If they're a family that's really struggling with money and they have a lot of chaos, I'll give them a mulligan, you know, and not charge them the first one. But thereafter, I always charge. There's very few exceptions to the rule. Now, if they cancel the day of, and I just happen to get an emergency call and I fill the slot anyway, and I'm feeling particularly magnanimous, I won't charge them. I'll say, dude, I filled the spot. But I don't have to, that's not part of the deal, you know. But it's good to notice when people are disengaging and then, you know, let them go. So, So, part of the process is, on the template is your dad, your mom, a step parent, spouse number 1, spouse number 2, write it on the board and everything about them. Do you do that?
I don't.
You got to do that.
I don't remember. I'm sure I heard that, but it got lost.
Yeah, it's one of the most powerful things.
I don't do that.
Yeah, you got to do that.
Visual.
It's a visual.
There's lists that you
It's
prefer. back
very
to.
powerful. Because the main thing you're trying to do is connect childhood with marriage. So you put dad, mom, hubby number 1, hubby number 2, and then I go through with a different color and I circle. So here's the pattern. Your dad was controlling and he was an alcoholic and he raged. Husband number 2 was a drug addict and he raged and he was control. And you just circle, and then a lot of times they're like stunned. It's like they've lived their whole life. They knew all these people. How'd you miss that? Well, they missed it because we have such great psychological defense mechanisms that defend us against too much pain and too much truth. It's amazing how we can be in our bodies, clearly witness to all the shit that we are going through, and somehow we miss it.
Well, not only that, but we idealize it.
Right,
We
right.
remember the good.
Right. Yeah, so it's amazing.
I like the idea of the defense mechanisms against too much truth.
Yeah,
Too much pain, yeah, we know we have those. But the defense mechanism against truth, which obviously.
truth leads to pain, right, right.
But saying it that way, I think is
Yeah.
very powerful.
But, so then what I say is, people say that love is a mystery, and love is not a mystery. Love's very simple. This is love to you. Love is getting beat, being abandoned, being fourth on the list, being Cinderella. Clearly that's love to you because you picked 3 guys who treated you that way. And if you don't fix this, the next guy, guess who he's going to be? He's going to treat you the same way. So I say love is very simple. It's just tailor-made for everybody. You can't make a comment about love that applies to the entire population. Your comment is about, giving your dad and your mom, this is who you're attracted to, and this is what love is to you. But it's different for everybody.
And kind of the way that you deal with them from that point forward is helping them see the uniqueness of their situation.
Yes.
And every time you push
Yes.
that button in them, they say, he knows me, he gets it.
What do you mean he knows me?
Well, every time that you say something to the client that shows that you understand their uniqueness, they know that they've got somebody who's getting it.
Right.
So the more you can uniquely touch their situation and point it out to
Yeah.
them, the more they feel understood.
I mean, really, a good feedback session is you understand them first, and then you explain it to them. And if you understand them, and you got this part right, and early on, as much as possible, you should run your genograms by me, because and if you make an actual genogram with the symbols, I'll look at it and see something that you probably won't see, and it might be killer. It might just be killer, game changer. You're looking for the game changer, and sometimes it's not. Obviously, dad was an alcoholic, dad rage, husband as an alcoholic. That's softball. It's easy, but sometimes it's like tricky. It's like really tricky, and you just have to study it. And there's 10 million flavors, and I haven't seen them all, but I've seen a million of them, But there's always a new flavor. That's what makes the work so interesting, But after you complete 500 genograms, you'll see it. And a lot of times, I don't even see it. I'll take the genogram, I'll have the feedback session in an hour, like Mick. I mean, I didn't sit down and start working on his genogram till 7:25.
This morning?
Yeah. And I didn't really know what I was going to say. But
Down, the first part.
But if you just look at the genogram and you have your template, and you just start adding what you see, then it's pretty easy. So I've gone from, dear God, what am I going to tell this person, to let me at them. I'm going to kill them. You know, they're going to be signed up for group and, you know, reading books and high-fiving on the way out the door, because, you know, this is going to go well. So
I have the new client, sorry to interrupt.
You're fine.
The new client that I had last night, I probably will. I had my first session last night, and they're coming in next week, and I think I'll be able to do a feedback session after the second one. But I probably would want to run it by you. They remind me of
Oh.
the gallery even looks like.
Oh.
Like, so similar.
Wow.
So similar.
Uh-huh.
In just the way they behave, and, you know, this dude is so, I mean, he wants to fall into himself, he's so full of shame. And she's so, like, cut off. She's really hurt by it, but she's so cut off is what I see. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna bring today.
And you've seen him once?
Just once, just last, Tuesday. Really excited about it.
So you guys should probably allot an hour and maybe 45 minutes for every feedback preparation, because it'll take you that long. I can do most of mine in 20 minutes.
It takes me 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah. It might even take you 2 hours or an hour and a half to really study it,
Because
because
I want to be thorough.
you just want to have it right, and you want to be articulate. You want to dazzle them. You know, that you want them to walk out going, wow. You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Sometimes things do just jump out.
they do.
Yeah.
You don't have to study. You sort of know what you're going to say.
Yeah, there's always more to see, but
There's always more to see.
there's always more if you, I don't think, I certainly couldn't do it without studying. Plus I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I enjoy that.
I knew.
But it just seems like there's always something beyond when I think, oh, this is so obvious. There's always something.
There is.
Yeah. In school, I knew all along that the genogram was one of the big keys.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so many things that they're telling you about with that genogram at home.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time.
Can't talk. My face is full of food.
There was a movie out there called A Holiday, and in it was Kate Winslet and Cameron Diaz. But Kate Winslet is sitting with a brand new friend of hers, an 80-year-old man who lives in Hollywood, and she's sitting with his brand new friend, and she's upset because of a guy in her life. And the guy from Hollywood, her 80-year-old friend, says one sentence to her. And she says, I've been going to therapists for 5 years. And they never explained it as well as you just did. And, you know, one sentence.
Yeah, and you'll get people like that who've been to 4 therapists and went for 5 years, and you'll point something out, and it's usually about their family of origin and the connection, and that's priceless. I mean, that changes. I mean, it really changes people's lives. forever.
And I'll never forget it.
Yeah, so, but what you don't want to do is not see the connection and go in ill-prepared and not have a lot of confidence, and then if you're with defensive people, they'll eat your lunch. They'll take your lunch, they'll eat your lunch, you'll never see them again. You know, and not because you didn't have the goods on them, just because they were a tougher case than you thought, and you just weren't ready for them. You have to, yeah, I go into a feedback session, you know, like a fighter. You know, I'm ready to punch and jet, because they're there because they want help, but their psychological defenses have no intention of changing. Their psychological defenses, their whole life has been stay the same. It's cool, you know, bury it. Like this fella today, Mick, he said, well, my wife and I, our power dynamics are 50-50. And I said, no, they're not. Never seen it. I bet you anything this woman rides him.
Well,
Like-
and then you went on to say the fact that you don't even want to ask her to come to these sessions because you know what she's going to say is so telling. That was one of the things you pointed out to him. But he was very interesting today because it was the first time that he just was not ready. He wasn't going to, oh yeah, okay. He was going to just sit here and stoke me till you were done.
So it's like, really what you're looking for is how are they thinking about their problem, and how can you give them a more accurate way of thinking about it. And with some people it's dramatic. It's poor me, I'm a victim, all the way over to, you know, this is all good. And some other people it's smaller, like this guy, it's, you know, it's a pretty small trip, but it's a trip. And it's what people love is, and it sounds weird, you know how people, you go to a trainer, you know, for exercise, who are the busiest, most successful trainers? The tough ones, the badasses who, I mean, they don't abuse people, those people probably aren't very successful, but people that really push people, same thing with a therapist. People do not want a head shaker who just sits and listens, and, you know, they don't want that. They want, especially early on, they want somebody to speak with authority and cut them open and make them bleed, and they'll love you for it. You know.
And that is going to be so much easier after you get some clients under your belt.
Yes, it is.
Because
It
it's
is.
a confidence thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
You know what I've run into twice lately, which I find interesting. It probably won't be that interesting to you, but
Might be.
female clients who have, I have two female clients who have always chosen really controlling men. And then they get into this relationship with this guy. Both of them have brought the guy in with them because that happens a lot. Have brought the guy in with them, and the guy's sitting there going, I'm not controlling. I want you to think for yourself.
There it is, right there in front of you.
I had that.
I want you to make your own decisions. I
Right.
want you to go to school. I don't want to control you.
Yeah.
Right, look at the finger at the face.
Oh.
I had that with a gal in group where she's pretty counter-dependent, but in relationship, she picks ultra counter-dependence. Excuse me. And very, very controlling. And somebody like that comes in, and you need to have warfare from the first 2 minutes, because he interrupted her 2 minutes in. So I pointed that out, and he pouted the rest of the session, and she told me that he drove around and was mad, you know, that I interrupted. But you're there to name truth, And with somebody like that, it's like you hold the mirror up really quick, you know, and get a reaction. So.
Don't take the bear down.
Okay, so
In
we'll.
either case, are they still with the person?
Right, right. I doubt if these people are together.
Oh, okay, you know where we got to?
Yes,
All right, good,
we got-
good. All right. Hey,
We got
thanks
through
so much.
six,
Very
five
helpful
five
stuff.
concepts.
See you at 3:30.
Yep.